Welcome to Sports Insider on cleveland.com. I'm your host, Chris Fedor. Got a jam-packed show for you in the next 30 minutes. We'll chat with Ohio State beat reporter Doug Lesmerises. Mary Kay Cabot, our Browns beat reporter, will join us as the Browns have made a decision on their starting quarterback. It'll be Brian Hoyer week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And also, Saturday night's a huge night in Cleveland. The Browns play their third preseason game. The Indians take on the Astros. And the Arena Bowl is going on at Quicken Loans Arena. Cleveland Gladiators against the Arizona Rattlers. And offensive lineman Chad Schofield of the Glads will join us towards the end of the show. But it's all about the quarterback here in the state of Ohio, and that goes all the way to Columbus as well. Doug Lesmerises, our Ohio State beat reporter, joining us right now. Doug, thanks for a couple minutes, bud.
Good to talk to you, Chris.
All right, Doug, so take me through it. As someone who knows Ohio State inside and out, you're around the players, you knew what the expectations were coming into this season. How significant is the loss of Braxton Miller?
I mean, I think it's huge. When it initially happened on Monday, Urban Meyer described it yesterday as, devastating off the bat when you see what has happened. Curtis Grant, their senior linebacker, said initially on Monday night the team was in panic mode. That's that initial gut reaction to losing the two-time Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year, a guy in Braxton Miller who's going to be a 4-year starter, who everyone, is expecting to keep getting better. We know he's a great runner. You thought he was going to keep improving as a passer, even though he was coming off this shoulder surgery in February, 6 months ago. The expectation around the team was that, we're taking it slow, but he's going to be back and everything's going to be okay. And then this happens and he's gone. So it's a very interesting time right now. There's a lot of people, I feel like, who are feeling like J.T. Barrett. He's a redshirt freshman, but he was a big-time recruit. They have other offensive guys who are good. They'll be fine. And I just think that's I'm not ready to go down that road. They're not going to fall apart. But to go from the guy who was won as many individual awards as anybody in Big Ten history, 4-year starter, to J.T. Barrett, who has never played a down of college football, I mean, that's what you need to know. J.T. Barrett has potential, but those are the facts right now, and that's a huge change.
Specifically, what is the one thing more than anything else, Doug, that this offense is going to miss without Braxton Miller?
Fear. The fear that his running ability strikes in a defense. Chris, that at any level, accounting for the quarterback run, especially on broken plays, is the most difficult thing for a defense to do. And Braxton Miller was as good at that as anybody in college football. He was as dynamic a runner in the open field as any quarterback in college football. And that's just not the type of quarterback that J.T. Barrett is. Yeah, he can move around. He's got some moves. He's not Braxton Miller. Nobody's Braxton Miller. And that, I think, just changes everything in how a defense game plans for you, in how they have to account for things. Do you have to spy Braxton Miller? You have to be wary of him on every snap. And when you don't have to do that with a quarterback, it allows you to focus more on everyone else, on the tailback, on the power run game, on the receivers, on the tight ends. Everybody else won't be quite as good because the defense doesn't have to be scared of what Braxton Miller might do if he takes off and runs.
So what do we know about J.T. Barrett, if anything, at this point, Doug?
He's a fine young man. I love talking to J.T. Barrett. He's like, for the fact he hasn't played, he redshirted last year. I've talked to him multiple times. They love his leadership. They love his maturity. He is more of a distributor. He's more of a Kenny Guyton type, whatever that means, in terms of he's not, a game breaker. He's going to get the ball out and find his playmakers. But he's never played. He had an ACL tear his senior year of high school. He was even, he didn't play as much then as he would have. It did limit him a bit in practice last year in his first year in Columbus. So there's a lot they like about him. He's a good athlete. He's not a supreme, crazy athlete. And frankly, for 6 years at Ohio State, the quarterback has been that. 3 years of Terrell Pryor, 3 years of Braxton Miller. You've had a freak athletic talent running the show. That's going to be different. That's not J.T. Barrett. They said not great arm strength, more of a good reads, timing, accuracy kind of guy. So I think he certainly does have good potential. They have raved about his leadership since he was a recruit. I don't think he'll be scared. I don't think the moment's too big for him. He's just never done it.
So you mentioned two big things about Barrett. Number one, redshirt freshman. And the other thing, Doug, you mentioned how late in the game this is. Ohio State's getting ready for their first game against Navy in just a matter of days here. So when it comes to Urban Meyer and his offense, how much do you think he's going to change things knowing that he no longer has Braxton Miller, the Big Ten Player of the Year? He has a redshirt freshman.
You know, things were changing anyway. They had talked a lot about, I think, wanting to take some of the pressure off Miller as a runner. They wanted to diversify the offense, get the playmakers more involved. That was changing anyway, so that is really what it's going to be now. So I think in terms of how they attack, I don't think it's a sea change. I think it's, you know, it's what they were leaning toward. What we saw in 2012, for instance, in Meyer's first year, when it was basically, hey, Braxton, go make a play, at least for the first half of the year, that was going to be different anyway. What we saw last year with the power run game with Carlos Hyde and that experienced offensive line, that was going to be different already anyway. So it is going to be different from last year, but I don't think the plan changes too much. Barrett has taken a lot of snaps in practice because Braxton Miller did not do anything in spring football because he'd been limited this preseason. So Barrett has taken a lot of practice snaps. I think the thing we'll see more of is the speed guys at the H-back position, Dontre Wilson, Jalen Marshall, guys like that. They'll really have to get them more involved because those guys are now the players who have the best chance to put a defense on its heels if Braxton Miller is not on the field.
Can Ohio State still win the Big Ten without Braxton Miller?
You know, can they? They can. I don't think they will. I didn't think they were going to before with Braxton Miller. I was picking Michigan State because I think that road trip for Ohio State to Michigan State in prime time in November is a tough test. It's a really tough test now. I don't think they'll win it. I think that's a tough game, and I think this brings in 4 or 5 more games on the schedule where before you would have had a great deal of confidence that Ohio State would win those games. Now they're more in doubt. I don't think they're going to lose them all. I think they'll lose one of them somewhere because Braxton Miller can't bail them out, because something happens and a young quarterback makes a mistake. It's just life, whether it's Virginia Tech, whether it's at Maryland, whether it's Penn State, you know, whether it's late in the season against Michigan, something like that. I think you've lost a great deal of your margin for error when you take your best offensive player off the field. So I think this is not a collapse by any stretch, but I don't think this is a Big Ten championship team.
Doug, do you expect Braxton back in 2015?
You know, they came out right away in the statement and said he's coming back in 2015. I think it's hard to know your future right now. He has indicated publicly that if he had been healthy after last season, if he hadn't needed the surgery, he might have gone pro after his junior year. So he's thinking about the NFL. Chris, I know you know, I mean, this is not a guy who's a first-round draft pick.
Right.
But he was already thinking about it. The interesting thing was, you know, this injury happened 6 months after his last surgery. Now Urban Meyer has said, as far as he knows, this is a 9 to 12-month injury now. So if he can't throw for anybody before the draft, I don't know if you can go pro. I don't even know. I think maybe it's off the table. You know, like how can you put your future out there when you have no way to show people that you're back to healthy? So if it is that long of an injury and he can't do anything until the summer next year anyway, then maybe I think he almost has to come back because he has to give teams another year to show that he's grown, but more importantly to show that he's back and healthy.
Tons of coverage on Ohio State on cleveland.com. So make sure you check it out. Doug Lesmerises, one half of our Ohio State beat reporting team. Thanks so much for joining me, Doug. Appreciate it, bud.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, there he is, Doug Lesmerises, still to come. We'll talk to Cleveland Gladiators offensive lineman Chad Schofield. The Gladiators getting ready for the Arena Bowl on Saturday night at the Q against the Arizona Rattlers. The Gladiators have lost just 1 game so far on the season, so Chad Schofield is around the corner. Also, the Browns have made a decision on their starting quarterback. It is going to be Brian Hoyer, not Johnny-Manziel. Head coach Mike Pettin said in a release, quote, Brian Hoyer was the clear leader from the beginning. We've maintained all along that if it was close, I would prefer to go with the more experienced player. Brian has done a great job in the meeting rooms and with his teammates on the practice field and in the locker room. And joining us to talk about that big decision is our Browns beat reporter, Kay Cabot. Kay, thanks so much for a couple minutes.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You got it. So take me through this one. Brian Hoyer, he's going to be the starting quarterback week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Do you believe Mike Pettine made the right decision, Kay?
You know what? In this case, I do. I mean, Johnny is even admitting that he's not ready yet. I don't think he's demonstrated on or off the field that he was ready to take over and be the leader of this team. And I wrote this in a column yesterday. How do you stand up in front of all your guys and say, hey, you know what, the young man that just flipped the bird to the Redskins bench, he's your guy. Or, hey, you know what, we didn't see Johnny at that team meeting last Monday, but, you know, he's our starting quarterback. So I think on and off the field, it was time to just let Johnny kind of get up to speed a little bit.
So there are some people that still believe, Kay, that Manziel should be starting week 1 against the Steelers. And what they would say is, if Monday night's game against the Washington Redskins was supposed to be big when it comes to this quarterback competition, and Brian Hoyer went 2 for 6, and he accounted for 0 first downs and 0 touchdowns, how is it that that game could be so important in the eyes of the coaches, but yet result in Hoyer getting this starting job? How do you explain that?
You know what? I think it's a matter of them realizing that Johnny is not ready for this right now. So I think right now, Johnny kind of lost the job more than Brian went out and won it. We can obviously see that he didn't go out Monday night and win this job with a good performance. It was not a good performance by Brian. Now, I do think there are extenuating circumstances for Brian not playing well right now, and I think there's about 4 or 5 reasons for that. Number 1, the supporting cast right now is not good. It's inconsistent. We haven't seen Nate Burleson. Josh Gordon's head is not in the game. Jordan Cameron's shoulder has been injured. Travis Benjamin went out of the game with a rib injury, and Charles Johnson and Travis are coming off ACL. There has not been, just a consistent pattern of receivers in there that you know are going to be your go-to guys. So that's one thing. Brian's coming off of a torn ACL. It's not that easy to do. You have to get over it psychologically as well as physically, and I think he's still shaking off the rust. Everyone is learning a new offense, and they're just not really up to speed and playing quickly yet. You saw Alex Mack actually snap the ball too early on that first play. So I think there's a lot of things like that. They probably looked at this and said, we can get some of these things cleaned up. We can get some of these guys back into the lineup on a consistent basis, and it's going to look better as we go along.
Kay, as this offseason quarterback competition was going on, do you think there was any scenario where Mike Pettine would have been comfortable enough going with Johnny Manziel, a rookie, into Pittsburgh week 1 against the Steelers and Dick LeBeau?
I don't think he ever wanted to do that. I think he thinks like a defensive coordinator. He knows exactly what's going on in Dick LeBeau's mind right now, and that is attack that rookie, confuse him, cross him up, get him rattled. And I think as time went along, it was evident that, hey, Johnny's coming up the learning curve. He's working hard and he has buckled down, but he's not going to be ready for Dick LeBeau and what the Steelers are going to have to offer. And the bird flip in Washington showed that he can be gotten to. He can be rattled. And what you have, I mean, you know, and I know exactly what Steelers fans would have done to him, what the bench would have done to him if he had shown those kind of chinks in the armor right now. So I don't think Mike Pettine ever wanted to start Johnny Manziel, and if he was going to win that job, Johnny was going to have to make it so obvious and so clear that he deserved it that Mike would not have been able to deny him.
Kay, for Johnny Manziel starting his NFL career on the bench, can that be a good thing for him, and if so, how?
I definitely think it'll be a good thing for him. Now I think he's probably going to realize what he has to do, what it takes to be a professional, how hard he's going to have to study. He did not realize that. The day that he was drafted, and I wrote this yesterday, the day that he was drafted, he started losing the job, and he continued losing it right up to the middle finger. And what I mean by that is, instead of just, holding up and getting in that playbook, we watched him crisscross the country, and, you cannot tell me that he couldn't have worked harder. Nobody can tell me that, what I saw all over Instagram and Twitter, that did not say to me, this is a young man that is really completely 100% committed and dedicated to doing every single thing that he can to win the starting job. I can't possibly believe that with what I saw. So now I think maybe he will figure it out, and I think Rex Grossman will help him. I mean, Brian Hoyer has got to worry about himself right now. He can't worry about getting Johnny-Manziel up to speed, but Rex Grossman can. In fact, in retrospect, I think that they should have signed Rex Grossman right away in May, and then, locked him on to Johnny and let him mentor him from the start.
Mary Kay, what is the relationship like between Hoyer and Manziel?
It's cordial, and, they do business, when they have to, and they sit in the meeting room, and I'm sure they get along fine, and they talk when necessary and whatever, but it's not like you're going to find them palling around or not. It's what Mike Pettin wanted it to be. He didn't want it to be warm and fuzzy. He wanted it to be a professional relationship. Now, Brian won't withhold information from Johnny, and he'll set the tone, and he'll lead by example, but he's not going to be going over to his dorm room at midnight and practicing the terminology with him.
Now, do you believe there was a consensus decision by the people that were in that meeting room on Tuesday night, Dowell Loggins, Kyle Shanahan, Mike Pettin, and others, that Hoyer was the right guy for the job, or do you believe it was a Mike Pettin decision?
Well, I think that Mike had a very strong influence, and he made it clear going into the meeting what he wanted to happen. I'm sure there was some healthy debate because, Brian hasn't performed well. You can see that he's not accurate. He doesn't have the timing down with his receivers yet. It's disturbing that he's only completed 40% of his passes. It's almost, it's hard to believe, 8 of 20. To head into the season like that, I'm sure there was some debate about, hey, well, at least Johnny can pull it in and run it and maybe get a first down that way. So I'm sure there was some healthy debate, but I think in the end that Dowell and Kyle probably had to agree that Johnny needs a level of maturity to go in there and pull this off, and he just doesn't have it yet.
You mentioned the struggles of Hoyer. Like you said, 8 of 20. He's accounted for 1 first down, 0 touchdowns so far in this preseason. Do you think this competition against Manziel and Manziel mania and everything that was surrounding this organization during this offseason, do you think that impacted Hoyer in a negative way, Mary Kay?
I don't. I think he's a professional. I think he learned the Patriot way, which is, one of the best organizations, of course, in all of football. He learned from Tom Brady what it takes to be focused and be a professional. I don't think it was the quarterback competition at all. What I think is that he's coming off of an ACL, and people underestimate how difficult that is. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was a quote from Carson Palmer to NFL.com that I used in a story the other day where he said, it's so scary to come back that first year. You have no idea how that knee is going to absorb a hit. You're running around on a brace. You have all those psychological issues about coming back from this injury to deal with, on top of learning a new offense. So I think it was Brian's learning a new offense, just like Johnny is. He's got the knee to deal with, and he's got skill players around him that right now that he's just not in sync with, or they're just not there on a day-to-day basis.
Mary Kay, how long is the leash for Brian Hoyer?
It's as long as he's winning. The leash grows longer and longer the more you perform well and you can win. I would say most people have that bye week circled as a point to look at after game 3. Mm-hmm. If Brian's not getting the job done, not moving the offense, not winning games, I'm sure they'll think about making a change.
All right, Mary Kay, thanks so much for joining me today on Sports Insider. I always appreciate the knowledge.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Our Browns beat reporter Mary Kay Cabot. Check out all of her stuff, cleveland.com/Browns. She's been all over this quarterback decision, as it's going to be Brian Hoyer, week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Mary Kay kind of said it right there. She doesn't feel like Brian Hoyer necessarily won the job from Johnny Manziel. She believes Manziel lost it. So that's going to be interesting to see. And yes, that bye week is week 4. The Browns start against Pittsburgh, New Orleans, Baltimore. Then they go to the bye, and then it's Tennessee after that. So some people think maybe a change could be made there. It's Sports Insider here on cleveland.com. I'm your host, Chris Fedor. The Gladiators getting ready for the Arena Bowl. It's Saturday night against the Arizona Rattlers at Quicken Loans Arena. And joining us offensive lineman Chad Schofield. Chad, thanks so much for a couple minutes, bud.
Not a problem.
All right, so for you, I mean, I got to imagine this is bittersweet. You were so vital to the team, having such a great regular season. You get injured in the first playoff game against Philadelphia. You're not going to be playing in the Arena Bowl on Saturday. Just take me through your emotions as this Gladiators team gets closer and closer to winning a championship.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame. I wish I was out there with my guys. I've been doing everything that I could possibly do to help these guys. Breaking down film, watching film. I'll be on the bench, watching all the blitzes. But I was just thinking about it the other day. Like, I mean, my emotions are going to be running high, but I wish I was going to be out there with my brothers.
What does it say about you guys, though, as a team, that not only have you been able to overcome your loss in the first playoff game against Philly, but you've been without defensive back Mario Norman, who got a tryout with the Baltimore Ravens, overcoming that as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, each week we have the mentality of going 1-0. And it's crazy to think about that, like, this is an actual team. We'll die together. We'll go on that field. It's a battlefield to us, and we're not going to let each other down.
And I think you mentioned it there. You're a complete team. It's all about 1-0. You've got the defense. You also have the offense. So many people, Chad, think about the Arena League, and they're thinking about 80 points. They're thinking about 90 points. They're thinking all about the offense. But you've gone against your defense. Just how tough is it?
Oh, my gosh. Just the other week, we were going against them in a little team session. I mean, they're hard to score on. I'd like to think, as us, having the best defense in the league, I kind of compare our team to, I was thinking about the other day, too, is the Seattle Seahawks. Really good defense, we could score points, and we have a pretty good quarterback, too.
As one of your leaders, you know, what has your role become during this week? It's interesting because you guys have had this week off before the Arena Bowl. What has your role kind of transitioned into?
I'm just trying to be a leader. I'm trying to be a vocal leader right now, inspiring these guys, and like I said, just doing every little thing I can, and whether it's breaking down film or just little things.
As the game gets closer, it's Saturday night, it's at the Q, you guys playing in front of the hometown fans. What has your message been to the team?
Just go out there, have fun. I mean, it's going to be loud. It's going to be crazy down at the Q. It's most likely going to be a sellout. But when it comes down to it, it's just another game for us, another opportunity to go 1-0.
Chad Schofield, offensive lineman for the Cleveland Gladiators, joining us here on Sports Insider. If you have any questions for Chad, you can go to the comment section at the bottom of the post. Arena Bowl is Saturday night at the Q against the Arizona Rattlers. Unfortunately, Chad injured in the first playoff game against Philly. He's not going to be able to play. You mentioned your quarterback, how talented he is. The plan going into the year, Chad, was not to have Shane Austin as the starting quarterback. What have you seen from him? Have you even been surprised that he's putting up MVP-like numbers?
No. Shane's the type of guy who comes into work every day, and he just grinds and grinds and grinds, and he's not going to let you down. I think he's the most accurate quarterback in the AFL. I mean, you look at some of his passes, and you're just like, wow, how did you make that pass?
Just how nice is it, though, Chad, knowing that you have that guy on your side when even if things aren't going great defensively for you guys, and you mentioned how tough your defense is, and maybe if you guys miss a block on the offensive line, you've got a guy like Shane backing you up there.
Yeah. I mean, being an accurate passer, you also have some legs. I mean, and we've seen it too. I don't know how many rushing touchdowns he has on the year, but I mean, I know it's up there for quarterback stat-wise. But he's a playmaker. I mean, he's a baller.
You're from Strongsville. You grew up here. You know how bad this city wants a title. You've got the chance on Saturday night against Arizona. Have you guys felt that pressure this season?
Not really. Like, I mean, it's crazy to think about, like, but the 1-0 mentality actually works. We just take it one game at a time. But I mean, this means this is huge for the city of Cleveland and for me. I consider myself as a fan still. I love the Indians, Browns, and Cavaliers. So for Cleveland to have a professional championship opportunity is huge.
Chad, you mentioned that 1-0 mantra. Did that come from Coach, or was that something you guys as a team created?
It actually started week one. Our offensive line coach said, hey, all we have to do this week is be 1-0. So we first game against Pittsburgh, we went 1-0. And then the next week, he said, hey, all we have to do is 1-0. And just kept on going and going and going. Kind of grew, made up some shirts, and the rest is history.
What do you know about Arizona? What can you tell me as the game gets closer on Saturday night?
They're back-to-back champs.
Yep.
They're the best team in arena football. Defensive-wise, they're real physical. They're gonna bang you around a little bit, get some pressure on the quarterback, and they're not gonna let you have that many opportunities to score.
Do you think they're the best team that you're going to play all season long?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, they're back-to-back champs, and when you want to play in the Arena Bowl, you want a shot at the champions.
Now, you mentioned it. You're from Strongsville. You're from here. You know all about the teams, the Indians, the Browns, and the Cavs. Yep. So the Browns named Brian Hoyer the starting quarterback week 1 against Pittsburgh. You on board with that?
Absolutely. That's kind of a tough question. I've been asked that before, too. I think he gives you the best opportunity going into Pittsburgh. Just because Johnny isn't playing or starting the game doesn't mean he won't play. But I think we'll see Johnny later on in the year, to be honest with you.
Your kicker, Aaron Petrie, flashed up the money sign after he hit that big field goal against Philadelphia, man. We're going to be seeing that Saturday night, too?
I hope it doesn't come down to a last-second kick where we have to see Aaron doing it. But that's actually funny because I didn't know he did that after the game. Then I was watching the clips and everything. I see him do that, and I had to call him right away and say, "Oh my gosh, can't believe you blew up the money sign."
All right, Chad, great stuff,
Aaron,
man.
He's not that type of guy. Aaron's the cool, calm, and collected type of guy.
Oh, so you didn't expect him to do it? Somebody else on your team you expected
He was the last
right?
person on the team. He's the last person on the team that you expect.
Who do you expect to do it? Shane?
Maybe T. Lou Goody, someone like that.
One of those guys. All right, Chad, great stuff, man. I appreciate you joining me. Good luck on Saturday night against Arizona. Bring home that title.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You got it. There he is, Chad Schofield. Cleveland Gladiators offensive lineman again. Unfortunately, he's not going to be playing in the Arena Bowl on Saturday night. Got an injury against Philadelphia, so he's kind of transitioned into that kind of coach leader role, and he's been one of the leaders of the team this entire season for the Gladiators. They've got 1 loss on the year, so get on out to the queue, support the Gladiators as they look to bring home the championship on Saturday night against Arizona. That's all the time we have here on Sports Insider. Thanks to Doug Lesmerises, our Ohio State beat reporter, Kay Cabot, our Browns beat reporter, of course, Brian Hoyer, named the starting quarterback. That's the big news. Braxton Miller out for the season for Ohio State. It's up to J.T. Barrett now and Chad Schofield of the Cleveland Gladiators. We'll talk to you next week right here on Sports Insider. We do it every single Thursday at 11:30 on cleveland.com.